Hey there, locals. It's your wildlife guy, Zach, and today I want to take you on a little bit of a dive. We're going to go snorkel with some manatees over at Crystal River. I love diving into the springs here because of just how clear the water is, and you can very clearly see the manatees and lots of fish and several other animals around. So let's go check them out. Florida manatees are such a special animal that we get to have here. Their closest living relatives are dugongs, which are found over in Australia, and elephants, believe it or not. Obviously, they don't have a trunk like an elephant, but they do eat a lot of vegetation just like an elephant does. This is kind of a younger manatee that I was able to get a little close to, and you'll see just how close we get to him. This one's just about the same size as a person. You might sometimes see these white lines on the manatees. Those are actually from boat strikes. A lot of people don't realize they're boating in manatee areas, and that can lead to them accidentally hitting the manatee with their boat. Not all of these injuries are deadly. Some of them are just more of a scratch or a scar, but it is something that affects them. These are striped mullet. They're actually a marine fish, so they normally live in salt water, but in the winter times they sometimes come into our spring areas. They can survive in freshwater for short periods of time. And there's a tilapia right at the end. Striped mullet on top of making for a really excellent bait fish if you're into fishing. Also taste amazing if you smoke them and turn them into smoked fish dip. Here is kind of a younger manatee that's coming up to check out an older manatee that's just resting. And the older manatee is just like, get out of here, kid. This here is an armored catfish, also known as a pleco. You might recognize them from having them in aquariums. And this here is a young manatee that's actually nursing from its mother. Remember, manatees are mammals, so they drink milk just like a baby does. Just like a human baby does, and it just so happens that their teat is in their armpit. This manatee is really inspiring the sea potato nickname that they get sometimes, for just coming up to check out my camera. Manatees like to hang out in springs like this, specifically during the winter time is the best time to see them. They do not do very well in the cold. What I'm swimming up to right now is a school of tilapia. This is the same tilapia that you might find in the grocery store, and they're actually an invasive species in Florida. They're not native to Florida at all, but they do really well in our ecosystems, and they're pretty easy to catch if you know how to catch them, and you can eat them right straight out of the water. These plecos you might recognize. This here is an armored catfish. You might recognize this as a suckerfish or a pleco that you have in an aquarium. They love to eat algae. They are also an invasive species. They look super, super cool, but they are from South America. They do not belong in Florida's ecosystems, and they eat a lot of algae and outcompete native algae eaters. So while they're cool to see, not necessarily something we want to keep in our ecosystems. Manatees only have about 2 to 3% body fat. It's kind of hard for them to build up fat because all they eat is vegetation all day. A fully grown manatee can eat up to 60 pounds of vegetation in a single day. And whenever you think about it, you're eating salad all day. It's kind of hard to pack on body fat. And because of that, manatees are very sensitive to the cold, which is why they hang out in springs. Anytime the temperature gets below 60 degrees, the manatees will start heading towards the springs because Florida springs maintain the same temperature of 72 degrees year round. So cool to get up close to these guys. Now, it should be noted that here in this area of Crystal River, you are allowed to swim with the manatees. They can come up to you, and if they touch you, that's okay. In most areas, you cannot touch manatees or swim with them intentionally like this. So it's really cool that we have this resource just a little ways away over in Crystal River where you can go swim with manatees like this in a safe and secure area where they're used to it and you're not going to be harmed by anyone. You can see just a little pleco's tail underneath this manatee eating some algae off of its skin. Oh, and there goes a cormorant. I love these springs so much. It's so nice just to swim along the banks, even whenever you give the manatees a little bit of a break and get to see some of the other fish that are hanging out there and some of the plants that are growing in the springs. It's not quite as pretty as a coral reef, but there is definitely something peaceful and tranquil about swimming through an area like this. Thank you for sharing this little adventure with me and getting up close to some of our Florida wildlife that we have, and I hope to see you out there. The scientific name for the family that manatees and dugongs, their closest relatives, belong to is called Sireniidae, and it literally has the word siren in it, which is a reference to the mermaids and the sirens of the Odyssey, if you remember reading the Odyssey in high school. The sirens are supposed to be mermaids, and they're really beautiful, and supposedly legend has it that when Columbus and some of the first European explorers were finding America and the New World, that they saw manatees, and the sailors who hadn't seen pretty ladies for months on end looked in the water and thought that they were women.